Hello, hello. I'm Todd Jones. I'm an intercultural consultant, expat coach, as well as a soft life coach. And I am an expat living in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I'm excited that you have joined me, and I am going to just go ahead and get started. So, today I have the pleasure of interviewing an amazing master certified professional alignment coach who is also an expat from the US living in Lisbon, Portugal. So please help me welcome Miss Santana Inniss. So excited today to have you, Miss Santana. Um, you know, Before we jump into this conversation, I want you to tell my viewers a little bit about you and your business and how you became a master certified professional alignment coach.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm always happy to be in community with you. So a little bit about me. My name is Santana Inniss. As you mentioned, I'm a master certified alignment coach. I did everything right. I got the degrees, I climbed the ladder, got those titles, got the bag, and there was just always this sense of being stressed, burnt out, just not getting the respect that we all deserve in our careers. And so that really led me to get serious about sitting down, reacquainting myself with my values, what kind of life I wanted to lead, how I wanted to feel, what kind of impact I wanted to have in the world. And that was a transition that took so much introspection, diving really deep into mindsets and processes. And so, on the other side of that, building a soft life, an aligned life. I knew that I was called to help other professional, driven women that are burning out around this rise and grind culture to help them find their own pathways to soft, if that's what they're looking for, but aligned, incredible lives. And so I went back, answering that call to reskill and do my training and certification in the ICF model. And so now every day I'm blessed in my own soft life to work with professional driven women from all over the world that are looking to build lives based around alignment to what's true for them.
Absolutely. I love it. So you currently are living in Lisbon, Portugal, and like you just said, you have your own soft life that you've created. Tell us why. Why did you move to Lisbon?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a part of that evolution and that journey toward this soft life that I'm in and strengthening and building out. For me, I was working in Washington, D.C. on the grind. It's one of the most insane work cultures in the US. I mean, maybe New York tops it, maybe San Francisco tops it, but Washington, D.C. is if you're awake, you're networking. If you're awake, you're trying to figure out who can help you in your career, like, these types of things. And I felt so disconnected from myself, from community, from connection. And those are things that are really important to me. And so when the pandemic hit, I thought, okay, we're all online. Maybe this job that I had at the time would accommodate an international move. I knew I could live in more balance. I knew I could live in more wellness in Europe generally. But I had been to Lisbon. I had felt the vibe, the energy, the sun of the city. And so I had a pretty good idea that I could live a softer life here. So I applied for residency and I was lucky enough to receive it. And I've been here ever since.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So let's just talk about this whole notion of soft life. Now, I like to try to bring people back to what the original meaning of living soft really is all about, not the lux of it and, still chasing bags and not really accomplishing the soft living aspect of it. But talk to us about what soft life actually means to you and
Yeah.
how that actually encompasses having an aligned life, since you are an alignment coach.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. And it's an important question because the internet is a hot mess right now. When you look at the conversations that are happening online, you have camps over here talking about high quality man, high value woman. You have like a trad wife thing going on. And so there are a lot of ways that people are using this idea of soft life. I mean, you even gave the example, the luxury aspect. That's one way that people use it. So to me, what I can say is zooming out from any ways that our cultures define gender. For me, I know that when I am aligned to what makes me feel my best and my most well, I'm not in struggle. I'm not in resilience. I'm not in fighting for myself, for others. I am in balance. And when I feel safe, whole, secure, and well, I shift into a space of incredible compassion, incredible love to share, incredible creativity. For me, it's a space from which communities, nations, families, they're built and they're created in the alchemy of what the divine feminine can do when it is in a space where it can be safe and relaxed. For me, that's what soft life means. And that's what I'm optimizing toward in my life because I had the opposite for so many years. And it's not to say that I want any woman on the earth to make any choice that's out of alignment for her. This is just me. This is what's aligned for me and what I'm pursuing and curious about in my life today, because I know how burnt out and unhealthy I felt when I was in burnout, in like climbing the ladder, gripping, fighting, constantly in resilience mode. So in that, even there's some soft revolution. There's some soft advocacy or some soft, I don't know, it's sort of a softer way to opt out of a system that says we have to constantly be in a fight in order to succeed or be valued. What happens when I allow my business, when I get curious about my business, my prospects, my clients? And so your question around where does alignment come into that? It's such an important one because I think for especially women, it's important to define what soft life means to them and then to orient themselves around what that definition is. And if a soft life is even something that they want, right? Maybe they don't. I'm assuming if they're listening to this right now, it's something they're curious about or actively working toward. And so, what does it mean to you? Why does it mean that? What conditions do you need to be well within that? And then, how do we start aligning our actions toward bringing that reality into fruition in our lives every day?
Absolutely. I love how you brought all that together because it is important to kind of question like what is it that I really want? And I think everybody deserves a soft life. And I don't know anybody who wakes up and it's like, I want my life to be hard. I want to hustle. I want to grind. I want to do all these things to chase something versus attract and allow and to just be in a place of flow where things just like come to you and you're synchronized and you're like doing all the things that you love to do. I think we've gotten so far away from our natural state of being, and we're always in competition or always trying to do the next best thing or try to keep up with the Joneses, no pun intended. But all of those things that are contrary to peace, um,
Yeah.
it throws you off balance. So for you, because you were doing all the things, DC, I'm from DC as well. So I understand working in that environment and always, especially because it's one of those political cities and everybody is, who are you and trying to make sure that your credentials are right and doing all the things. Now, from going to that and into realigning your focus and deciding, okay, you wanted to do something different. Had you not left the US, do you think that your how do I want to say this? Do you think your trajectory would have been different? Or were you
Mm.
just at that point where nope, I'm ready to align, I'm ready to do the things that make my life easier, and I'm gonna have to make the hard decisions.
Yeah, another great question. God, you're full of these. That's such incredible hypothetical to explore. Like, what would have been different if I had not left the United States? You know, I think the first thing that's coming to mind for me as I'm pondering your question is that a lot of the systems in the US are built around a very hard life. A lot of what happens in the US, except for, of course, a small group of people that are kind of at the top enjoying the fruits of, you know, whatever has been fruiting. Except for a small group of people, I think the majority of folks in the US can relate to some aspect of a hard life. Things are difficult. So many Americans are one unexpected expense away from financial ruin. So many Americans are afraid to call an ambulance if they're critically ill or hurt because they could go into intergenerational debt from medical debt, right? So there's something
Ridiculous.
around some, you know, a lot of the ethos of the United States, the pull yourself up by your bootstraps, the hyper individualism. Um, there's something about that that is predicated upon a structural hardness that values difficult, arduous, terrifying labor in order to simply exist. So it's not that I wouldn't have come to burnout. It's not that I wouldn't have come to a place where I knew life was unworkable and I needed to make changes. But there are a lot of people in the US that can come to that realization. They can suffer profound burnout. And because of the structure, not be able to take as drastic of change action as I took with moving to Portugal. So if I had stayed in the US, I would have gone in this direction because it feels aligned to who I am and what I need to be well in life. But I think it would have required a lot longer of a runway. It would have required a lot more planning and hardness before being able to lean into softness. So for some reason, I have a lot of clients that are like 29, about to turn 30, and I love it because they find me. And that's such a pivotal place in the career because you still have time to plan the soft life. It's a great time to opt out of the premise that we must participate in the structure that values people suffering in order to exist in the system. That's a really like esoteric answer. I hope, you know, I see you nodding, so maybe you're picking up what I'm putting down.
No, it was wonderful because it actually brings me to my next question because, you were at a place where, thank God or the universe or whatever, that you had the opportunity in COVID to kind of reassess and move forward in a way that helped you align in your career as well as your personal life. But for a lot of people who are even considering living abroad or becoming an expat, that's a difficult, not only decision, and like you talked about having the runway to make it happen,
Yeah.
short runways don't always lend to success, right? And so if you're transitioning, that could be very difficult for someone, especially if they've never been lived abroad. But if they have, or they're just considering it and they're trying to go from what has become difficult, because when you're living in your own culture, you're living in your own country, things there they can be difficult, but for the most part, it's what you're accustomed to, right? And
Yeah.
so when you're now thinking about living abroad, how can you make the transition where it's not so difficult and you are aligning yourself so that you can have a smoother transition in a softer life.
Yeah, once you're already abroad, you mean?
Right.
Yeah. I think it takes a whole lot of the capacity to notice and to be with. These are two really essential skills for greeting anything in life, but especially for moving abroad, in my opinion. I was not prepared for, or rather, I should say, what surprised me the most about this transition was the vacuum that was created by moving abroad. And what I mean by that is I didn't realize how much weight I was carrying from this difficult life in the US, from being a brown woman in corporate America, constantly aware of microaggressions, constantly aware of the isms, living in Washington, D.C. when the Capitol was stormed. I mean, nowadays they teach little kids in school active shooter drills. You know, we don't realize in the US that that's not normal. And so I wasn't prepared for the vacuum that would present itself once
Mm.
all of those heavy but unseen burdens could be laid down in my new life abroad. And so I had to notice that the vacuum was there, and I had to be with the realization and the processing of the transition, right? Because wherever you're from and whatever's going on in your country, if you're considering moving abroad, something is probably not working for you in the place that you live. And there's some grief that comes with that. There's some sadness. There can be a sense of cognitive dissonance that happens when you're confronted with where your culture or your country ends and you as a person begin. And so to notice when it's happening and to be with it, and then to ask yourself, what do I want to do with the spaciousness that's opened up? And not be so keen to fill it with other shit right away. Hope you can blink
Yeah.
that out. But when we're moving abroad, a lot of it is about being open to new experiences. We don't have to accept them all. We don't have to like them all. We don't have to bring them all into our daily practice or our conception of self, but we've got to be open to them. And so I think openness, relaxing into, noticing, capacity to be with, these are all soft skills, which I hate that phrase, soft skills, but these are all softer skills, right? That can help us be more successful when we're transitioning, especially into life in another culture or country.
So, what are a couple things that you learned about what you were leaving behind and what you now could develop, create, or transition into regarding your new life abroad, um, just so that you could be more aligned, just so that you could have a softer life?
Yeah, yeah. You know, a lot of it was noticing how much of a struggle that working in corporate America was for me. I've always been incredibly justice oriented. And so, regardless if we are in the same group, you know, affinity group, if we're the same ethnicity, if we're the same religion, if we're the same gender, you know, in the corporate space, if I saw someone that was, you know, being treated unfairly or I was being treated unfairly, there was always something that I spoke to and spoke up about. And it created so much friction internally and externally. And I knew that this wasn't a system that I could thrive in, but it's a very American thing that we're told that we have to, right? We have to pay our dues. We have to suck it up. We have to keep it pushing, you know, whatever phrase you want to do. And so part of moving abroad and recognizing that I didn't have to participate in the system. Ooh, this opened up a lot of space for me, and it opened up the possibility for me to sit it down and to use the runway that I had created for myself, use the safety net that I had created for myself to start building a business, to completely change my career in my late 30s. She's flirting with 40, right? So this is a thing that, you know, I don't know if I would have had the spaciousness or the runway if I hadn't have moved to Portugal. And that makes me grateful every single day that I'm here. Because I've made this transition, I'm able to live in my purpose. I'm able to live in alignment with the impact that I want to create in the world. And I don't know that that would have been possible if I had stayed in the United States. Does that answer?
Yes, absolutely. You said a couple different things, and I was just thinking, well, first of all, let's just go ahead and because you're young, you're just a baby. I'm like knocking on 50's door and still trying to make different transitions in my own personal life. That sometimes, where you're trying to make your life softer and more agile, and yet you're like, okay, I got all these other things that are like coming at me because you're like, oh, my time is running out, which is not, or like, I'm doing this at this particular point. I'm doing this at, with this, and like, for instance, me moving to Malaysia with a child, single
Yes.
now, and now he's going through the whole phase of going to school. And it's like, okay. I want my life to be a little bit easier, a little, the
Yeah.
transitions to be a little smoother. But at the end of the day, the life that I have created outside of the US is way more okay, it's easier. Like it's simpler. Um, I can still the quality of life that comes with leaving the US. And I don't advocate that everybody leaves the US because I don't think that that's everybody's calling to just pack up their bags and then move to a foreign country and start over. However, I know for me, to, this is not my first time living abroad. This is my third time. And, the second time with a child, the first time I was definitely single and free and fancy and do all the other things, right?
Yeah.
But I even remember the first time I moved to Korea, life was just, it's like taking, being a hoarder. And I don't even know what that means. But if you have all this junk, all this stuff, and it's just like piling up, and you get the first opportunity to relieve yourself of that, first, you're struggling with the fact that I want to keep my things, right? Because you have attachment issues. But then
Yeah.
once you realize that life is a lot easier, it flows a lot better when you relinquish all of the weight, and all I'm hearing is bag lady in my head.
Bag lady. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta let that stuff go because you're
Yeah.
carrying all of the weight of the world on your shoulders, and it doesn't have to be that way. And
Yeah.
so I think for me, the real blessing in all of this, whether you live abroad or not, when you decide that you want your life to be simpler, you want your life to be more aligned, that you want your life to be soft in essence, that you start thinking about what that really means and how you can relinquish some of the things that have been blocking you or
Yeah.
creating blockages and allow for the flow to come again. Because let's just be honest, everybody's not going to pack their bags and go live in some other country, but the things that they can do now, where they currently are what? That's my new transition. What can they do from
Yeah.
a standpoint of aligning so that their life can be softer?
I mean, I love the example that you shared, like letting go of all of the stuff that you accumulate. Um, that wasn't part of my story. I know it's a part of the story of I've always been a minimalist. It's like I had the mother, the boomer mother that just has a tchotchke like on every surface. So I've always been a hyper minimalist in my home, but everyone's carrying something. And
Mhm.
it's either literal or it's figurative, right? It's there, but we're all carrying burdens and we're all attached to something that we could let go, right? And so I think even if your path isn't to move abroad to find a softer life, there are tons of things that you can be doing right in your country, whether that's the US or some other place, to reorient yourself toward a softer life, a life with more ease and less friction. But it's always going to start with a deep, deep knowledge of who you are and what you need to be well. And it's a very provocative question. It sounds so simple. What do I need to be well? If you're in a society that doesn't value individual wellness, right? You know, if you're in a society that values struggle, hustle, rise and grind, work your ass off until you're 67 and you retire, you know, if you're living in a society that has those values, it's going to be difficult for you to ask a question like, what do I need to be well? And to begin to answer it. But when you ask that question and you're really honest with yourself about what comes up, you can start to make small pivots to orient yourself around that. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Some folks are working in really toxic work environments, and a very human reaction to long-term exposure to chronic work stress is to internalize the source of the problem, right? So it's me. And if I would just work harder or learn more or get another certification, then things would change here. But no. If what you need to be well is to not have work stress, to be valued, to not be facing the isms, you can start being very intentional in your recruiting efforts to find a company that aligns with the values that you have and the way that you want to feel when you're at work. And even doing that one thing alone can bring so much more ease into a person's life because now they're not constantly in fight or flight. And now they're experiencing less friction because they found a space and a place where most of the people share the values that they have. So that's one example.
Right.
That's just one example. There are so many more. Maybe you're hanging out with people that they're takers and you're a giver. That's a bad recipe.
Right.
And the noise inside that's coming up is maybe if I detach from these people, maybe I won't have any friends. Maybe I'll be alone. Maybe I'll be sad. Maybe I'll be a loser. This is some mental baggage that if we can allow it to be light and then set it down, you can go find other givers and you can all pour into each other. And this is another example of a way to live a more easeful life. But you got to know who you are. You got to know what you need to be well. And you have to start taking actions that will eventually bring you to that place, long runway or short.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you mentioned the mental aspect of it because it brings me to my final question. I know we're running out of time, but mindset. Um,
Yeah.
it's the one thing that is I find is extremely important, no matter whether you're trying to be aligned, whether you're trying to have a softer life, whether you just really need emotional intelligence, or whatever it is that you're seeking, you
Yeah.
have to start with your mindset. And it's imperative because that is where everything changes and cultivates from how you're thinking. And oftentimes you find people are in fear. Have totally neglected their inner self and they can't even hear a voice, let alone their
Yeah.
own voice.
Yeah.
And they're just totally operating outside of themselves versus coming back inside and really evaluating how they want to adjust life and how they want to to be aligned or need an alignment. I think that's great. That need that alignment so that you can move forward. Talk about how mindset plays plays a role in being more aligned and finding the focus that you need to move forward so that you can create whatever type of life that you want to have.
Yeah, beautiful question. Well, I think when I think of mindset, you think of the classic fixed versus growth mindset. And I think that's important to mention here. A fixed mindset means this is the way things are and that's it. So, we're riding through life with the cards that we have. And a growth mindset says this is the way things are and okay, I mean, hold my beer. Let's see. Things can change. I can learn. I grow all the time. So it's an orientation toward, do you have any control whatsoever around what's around you? Or is there absolutely nothing you can do to change your situation? And so the very first thing that we need to cultivate is a growth mindset. And it's just the acceptance that things do change and you see it in nature. Seasons give way to other seasons. Snow melts, right? So we see these beautiful transitions in nature. Going into an orientation around a growth mindset is just recognizing that transitions can happen in you too. That's a really important thing. We need that. The second thing around mindset that I think is really important for all of us, but I'm going to tell you right now, it is difficult.
Mm.
And that's the cultivation of a child's mind. When you are trying to change your life, when you are trying to do anything outside of your own status quo, your brain is going to give you all kinds of thoughts and all kinds of feedback because it wants you to go back to safety and home base. It wants you to go back to what you know. When you cultivate a child's mind, it means that you have a compassion and a curiosity that allows you to fail when you're learning something new. Because to change your life, you have to learn something new. You're either learning how to be comfortable in a new environment, or you're learning how to say no when you really mean no, right? And when you're learning something new, you are going to fail. And that's cool. And it's normal. When we look at a child, do you know how long it took me to learn to tie my shoes? A long time. And what did my mother not do? Oh, screw you. Look at you. You suck. You're taking so long to tie your shoes. What's wrong with you? 4-year-olds know how to do. Whoa. But we do that to ourselves.
Me too.
So we have to build in the expectation and the kindness and the warmth to allow failure when we're learning and to say, okay, that one didn't work. What a beautiful opportunity to try again. So those are the two things that I think are super important around mindset: growth versus fixed, moving into growth and building our capacity for a child's mind, because it's not if, it's when. The limiting beliefs, the spinning, the negative mental chatter that we can all fall into as human beings, the fear, in order to move through those things, we have to try something new and we have to be willing to fail. And we have to be kind to ourselves when we're not perfect the first try or the 100th or the 1000th, because that's how many tries you need to get to mastery. So these are the things I think are super important when we're pursuing a softer life, an aligned life, when we're thinking of doing big things that we've never done before. It's that self-compassion to look upon ourselves with the eyes we would give a child. Okay, Santana, you're learning. Of course, this isn't perfect. Try again. It's really powerful.
Absolutely. I mean, I love the fact that you use the child's mind because they're at that point where they're exploring
Yeah.
and nothing, you do have parents that are like, you're wrong, you need to do this. But when you are in a healthy environment as a child where you are able to develop normally or naturally, where you're inquisitive and you're going out and if you go scrape your knee, all right, you get back up. I just think about riding a bike. And sometimes it looks like you're about to crash and you jump up off the bike. And then you're like, okay, I'm not gonna just not ride a bike. I'm gonna have to get back on the bike and figure it out. And you keep on doing it until that one time where you're like, oh my God, I'm in flow and you're now riding. And you may still fall, but you get back up, you keep going, and that's how life is. And if you have a stuck mindset where you're like, I can't learn anything else, I can't do anything else, my life is stuck in this way, and I'm a victim, then you won't cultivate into that person that you dream about being. It'll just be a dream. So I'm glad that you used that as an example because children, especially when you watch them grow and develop,
Yeah.
they're like sponges, everything. And there's no I can't, unless another person tells them that they can't. But
Yeah.
I tell my son he can't. He's like, what? I can do anything. So, and they just make things up. And that's the imagination is so keen at that particular time where they're just like anything they can think of, they can do. And I love it. And so I'm glad that you used that as an example. Before we go, I want you to give some advice for anybody who is at that place right now where they're stuck and they don't necessarily see a way out. And even though they're trying to assess, what way do I go? How do I make it out of this place? Whether it's I'm thinking about relocating because life in America is, not that great these days. Or it's because I just really want to be the best version of myself. What advice do you give them to just start?
Yeah.
And how, as a coach, um, what advice would you give him? But like, what would you say to someone who's seeking your services?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that I would say, and very often do say to my clients, is that you are absolutely not alone. I know when you feel stuck, it is a sensation of, wow, I'm really alone in this experience, but you are not. And so many people, either currently or before you, have felt just as stuck and have found a way to move through. It's very normal when we feel stuck. We spin, we spin, we spin, we spin. We're in the center of our own tornado and we can't see 500 miles away to crystal clear blue skies, right? That's how that works. And that's normal, right? And so just relaxing into that to know that you're not alone and what you're experiencing is normal, I think it can lift a lot of the pressure and the frustration that stuckness can have, can bring into our lives. Once we create just that little crack in the door to let in a little light and to let in a little creativity, there may not be a light switch that you can flip that will change your life overnight. But most things are that way. When we're stuck, we want it fast because so much bottled up action that desires to pop out is the energy is it's like a trapped sensation, right? So we can start to orient ourselves from I'm stuck, this sucks, I'm suffering, and this sort of spin to a curious orientation. What could it look like? What could my life look like if it were aligned with who I am, what I value, what I need to be well, et cetera, et cetera. If we can bring in curiosity, then we can maybe tap in our child's mind to assist us. Because children, when they want something, they're thinking only about how, they're not thinking if. And when we feel stuck, we are thinking in ifs. If this were possible is very, very different. It is a literal, it's different grammatically, even than how is this possible? And that's a very powerful shift. It sounds so small, But a how is this possible separates the self from the problem, and it puts the problem on the table in front of you. It activates your curiosity, and it gets you to start thinking, how is this possible? What are the steps? What is my roadmap? It might take you 5 years, but isn't that worth it to change your life completely? It might take you 5 months to move from one job to another. Isn't that worth it if you can now sleep 8 hours a night? Isn't that worth it if you now have the flexibility to get in the daycare line when you need to get in the daycare line to pick up your kid? So moving away from the desire to have an immediate solution, opening up curiosity about how to bring this thing, and the acceptance that it might be a bigger goal, and that's okay. But bigger goals, climbing Mount Everest, that is one tiny decision at a time. That's going to REI and buying some boots and a backpack. That's finding a tour guide. That's practicing on the Stairmaster. I've never climbed Everest, no desire, but I know that for anyone to climb Everest, there are 100 million tiny decisions and actions that lead to it. And if we can just shift out of if to how, I think it taps in these beautiful energies of curiosity, of creativity, of problem solving, and pulls us out of the eye of our own tornadoes.
Absolutely. You said that so eloquently. I have 50 other questions to ask, but as I didn't get to any one of them, actually a couple, but it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I'm, I'm just so excited for all the work that you're doing. Share your LinkedIn because you give a lot of great tips and information on LinkedIn. How could someone find you?
Yeah, on LinkedIn, it's just LinkedIn, I don't know, .com/Santana Inniss. It's my first and last name. I post there most days of the week with tips, tricks, sassy perspectives on moving from the struggle bus into a softer, more aligned life. So you can find me there for sure.
I want to thank you again for always showing up for me and doing an interview and giving all of your expertise because you are a complete expert in this field. And I really respect the work that you're doing. And I just want to say thank you for joining me again.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be in community with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Until next time, I want to thank you all for listening, and I will drop all of Santana's information in the description below. So please make sure that you go check her out, get some of that free information that she's giving, and then sign up to see if you are a real alignment to work with her, because I think you will enjoy the work that you obtain from sitting down and having a coach and figuring out how you can be your best self and show up aligned and on purpose. So until next time, we'll talk soon. Ciao.